The year was 2347, and Ambassador Catherine Moore stood in the great hall of Station Varanthos. The station floated at the center of the galaxy, built by species so old that even they had forgotten their own beginnings. Around her, representatives from 47 alien civilizations watched with curious eyes, tentacles, and sensory organs that humans had no names for. Catherine had served as Earth's voice in this chamber for 15 years. She had learned to smile when insulted, to bow when disrespected, and to accept terms that made her stomach turn with anger. Today, all of that would end. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 73 years ago, full of hope and wonder. They had looked up at the stars and found that they were not alone. Thousands of species had already spread across the galaxy, building in civilization that spanned millions of worlds. The Council promised guidance, protection, and a place among the stars. What humanity received was something very different. The Council classified Earth as a developing civilization, a label that came with countless restrictions. Humans could not expand beyond certain boundaries. Human ships could not carry weapons above a specific power level. Human colonies required Council approval, and that approval was rarely given. At first, humans accepted these rules. They were new to the galaxy, after all. They assumed the older species knew better. They trusted that the restrictions would ease as humanity proved itself. The restrictions never eased. Instead, they grew tighter. Catherine remembered the day. 5 years ago, when Earth requested permission to establish a colony on a planet in the outer territories, the world was empty, unclaimed, perfect for human settlement. The Council debated for 3 months before rejecting the request. The reason given was that humans had not demonstrated sufficient cultural maturity for independent expansion. That same year, the Valathi Consortium, a species that had joined the Council only 2 centuries before humanity, was granted rights to 7 new star systems. When Catherine asked why the Valathi received approval while humans did not, the High Arbiter simply said that the situations were different. They were not different. The Valathi simply had better connections, more political allies, and a willingness to pay bribes that humans found distasteful. Catherine had swallowed her anger and continued her work. She had believed that patience would eventually bring results. She had been wrong. The breaking point came 3 days ago. Earth's colony on Kepler 4-4, to be, had existed for 12 years. 300,000 humans called it home. They had built cities, farms, and factories. Children had been born there who had never seen Earth. It was a successful, thriving world. The Council voted to quarantine the planet. The official reason was biological contamination. Council scientists claimed they had detected a dangerous pathogen that could spread to other worlds. The colony would be isolated indefinitely, cut off from all trade and communication with the rest of human space. Catherine knew the truth. Every human scientist who examined the data knew the truth. There was no pathogen. The Valathi Consortium had discovered valuable minerals on a moon near Kepler 4-2b, and they wanted humans gone from the area. The quarantine was a lie designed to strangle the colony until its people gave up and left. When Catherine presented evidence that the contamination reports were false, the Council dismissed her concerns. When she demanded an independent investigation, the Council refused. When she asked for a delay in implementing the quarantine, the Council voted against her, 43-4. That night, Catherine sent a message to Earth. She explained what had happened and what she believed must happen next. The response came within hours. Proceed. Now she stood in the Great Hall, surrounded by the species that had treated humanity as lesser beings for 7 decades. In her hands, she held a data tablet containing Earth's formal declaration of withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Hi. Arbiter Zolthax looked down from his elevated platform. He was an ancient creature with 8 limbs and skin like polished stone. His species had founded the Council 12,000 years ago, and he had served as its leader for the past 3 centuries. He had always treated Catherine with cold politeness. Never quite rude, but never quite respectful either. Ambassador Moore, he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, you requested this special session. The Council recognizes Earth. Catherine stepped forward to the central podium. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, waiting to hear whatever complaint or request the humans had brought this time. They expected her to beg, to negotiate, to accept whatever scraps the council offered. She would not beg. "Honored representatives," Catherine began, her voice steady and clear, "I come before you today not to ask for anything. I am here to inform you of a decision that has already been made." A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. This was not how things were done. Species came to the council to request, to petition, to seek approval. They did not make announcements. Effective immediately, Catherine continued. The United Earth government is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. All treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic arrangements between Earth and the Council are dissolved. All Council personnel and assets must leave human space within 30 standard days. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the chamber exploded into noise. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages. Some demanded clarification. Others accused Catherine of joking. A few simply sat in stunned disbelief, unable to process what they had heard. No species had ever left the Galactic Council. In 12,000 years, not one civilization had walked away. The Council was eternal, unchanging, the foundation of galactic order. The idea that a young, insignificant species like humanity would simply leave was beyond comprehension. High Arbiter Zolthax raised two of his limbs, calling for silence. The noise slowly faded. "Ambassador Moore," he said, and for the first time in Catherine's memory, his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "You cannot simply leave. The Council has procedures, requirements, obligations that must be addressed. There are treaties that bind your species to this body. Those treaties were signed under conditions we no longer accept," Catherine replied. "Humanity joined the Council seeking partnership. We found only chains. We asked for respect and received condescension. We offered friendship and were given restrictions that no other species would tolerate." She placed the data tablet on the podium. "This contains our formal withdrawal documentation. Read it or ignore it as you wish. The decision has been made." The Velothi representative rose from his seat. "This is about Kepler 4 Fortubi," he said, his voice oily with false concern. "If Earth is upset about the quarantine, we can discuss modifications to the timeline. There is no need for such dramatic actions." Catherine turned to face him. "The quarantine is a symptom, not the disease. For 73 years, this council has treated humanity as children to be managed. Problems to be controlled, threats to be contained. We will not spend another 73 years begging for basic dignity." She began walking toward the exit. Behind her, voices called out, demanding that she'll stop, that she'll reconsider, that she at least listen to their offers. At the doorway, Catherine paused and looked back at the chamber one final time. "Humanity will find its own path among the stars," she said. "We do not need the Council's permission to exist. We never did." The doors closed behind her, and the Galactic Council faced something it had never experienced before, a species that had simply said no. The news spread across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Within hours, every world connected to the Council communication network knew that humanity had done the unthinkable. They had walked away. On the agricultural world of Porthax Prime, Trade Minister Veleth stared at the reports on his display screen. He read them 3 times, hoping he had made some mistake in understanding. He had not. Veleth was a Corvathi, a species known for their careful planning and long-term thinking. His people had joined the Council 4,000 years ago, and in all that time they had never faced a situation like this. Trade with humans had become essential to their economy without anyone really noticing how essential. "Show me the full analysis," he said to his aide. A young female named Theris, who had been with him for only 2 years. Theris pulled up the holographic display. Numbers and charts floated in the air between them, each one worse than the last. "Human manufacturers produce 31% of all consumer goods in Council trade networks," she explained. "Their cargo ships carry 42% of interstellar freight. Human engineers maintain more than half of the stations along the outer trade routes." Veleth felt his breathing membranes tighten. How did this happen? "They are a young species. We called them developing. They developed, Theris said quietly. While the council debated and delayed, humans built. They worked longer hours than other species. They accepted lower payments. They went to places others considered undesirable. And now they control systems we cannot function without. On the Valathi homeworld, a very different conversation was taking place. Corporate Director Xanthus sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by the leaders of the Valathi consortium. They were the species that had pushed hardest for restrictions on human expansion. They had seen humanity as competition, a threat to their economic dominance. The quarantine of Kepler 442b had been their idea. Now they faced the consequences of their actions. Our mining operations in 17 star systems rely on human equipment, the operations chief reported. His voice was flat, but his fear was obvious. We have no factories capable of producing the same machines. The nearest alternative suppliers are the Corvathi, but their production capacity is already committed for the next 4 years. Then we go to the humans directly, Xanthus suggested. We offer them good prices, better terms than before. They are a practical species. They will see the value in continued trade. They have closed their borders, the operations chief replied. No non-human ships are being allowed through. Our trade representatives were turned away at the edge of human space. They were polite but firm, no entry, no exceptions. Xanthus slammed his appendage against the table. This is madness. They cannot simply cut themselves off from the entire galaxy. They can, said the economic advisor, an older Valathi who had spent centuries studying trade patterns. They have been preparing for this. Look at the data from the past decade. Human exports have been declining slowly but steadily. At the same time, imports from outside their space have also dropped. They have been building self-sufficiency without anyone noticing. They planned this. For years, perhaps decades. We saw only what they wanted us to see. Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes addressed the world government from the Capitol in Geneva. Behind him, a massive display showed the blue and green sphere of humanity's homeworld. Across the planet, billions of people watched the broadcast. My fellow humans, he began. Today we have taken the most important step in our history since we first left Earth's atmosphere. For 73 years, we played by rules designed to keep us small. We accepted limitations meant to prevent us from reaching our potential. We trusted a council that never trusted us in return. In the audience, Admiral Lisa Trent sat with her command staff. She was a short woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. For 20 years, she had commanded Earth's official naval forces. Watching as council representatives inspected their ships and counted their weapons, they had counted wrong. The council believed they understood humanity, the president continued. They saw us as young, impatient, dangerous. They thought they could manage us with restrictions and quotas. They were wrong about everything except one thing. We are dangerous. Not because we seek conflict, but because we never stop working, never stop building, never stop pushing forward. Admiral Trent smiled slightly. The council had no idea what was coming. We have 30 days before the deadline expires, the president said. In that time, we will demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity does not need the Galactic Council. We never needed them. They needed us, and they are about to discover just how much. On Station Varanthos, High Arbiter Zolthax called an emergency meeting of the full council. All 47 member species sent their highest representatives. The crystalline chamber, designed for calm debate and careful deliberation, became a scene of barely controlled panic. We must respond with force, declared Representative Kallax of the Varathi Federation. The Varathi were a warrior species, proud and aggressive. They had always viewed humans with suspicion. Send the combined fleet to their borders. Show them the consequences of defying the council. And then what? Asked Admiral Koreth of the Zenthari Empire. The Zenthari were the council's primary military power, and Koreth was their greatest commander. He had won more battles than most species had recorded histories. We threatened them into returning? We forced them to trade with us at gunpoint? That is not how economies work. We cannot simply accept this insult, Kallax insisted. "The insult was ours," said Trade Minister Velith, speaking up from his seat. The Korvathi rarely involved themselves in military discussions, but this was not really a military issue. We treated them as inferiors while depending on them as equals. We restricted their growth while benefiting from their labor. We lied about contamination to steal their colony. The insult was ours, and now we face the cost. The chamber erupted into argument. Species that had cooperated for thousands of years turned on each other, blaming anyone but themselves for the crisis. Zolthax watched the chaos with ancient eyes. In 3 centuries of leading the council, he had never seen anything like this. A single species, barely a century removed from their first interstellar flight, had brought the great Galactic Council to the edge of collapse. Not through war, not through threats. Simply by leaving, he thought about what Ambassador Mora had said before she walked out. Humanity did not need the Council's permission to exist. They never had, perhaps. Zolthax considered that had always been the problem. The Council had tried to give permission, to grant approval, to control. They had never understood that some species could not be controlled. Now the galaxy would learn what humans could do without limitations. Zolthax was very old, and he had seen many things in his long life. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he'd barely recognized: fear. 18 days after Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, Ambassador Catherine Moore sat in a secure room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had no official name and appeared on no public records. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Around the table sat the 12 members of Earth's Strategic Planning Council, the true leaders of humanity's expansion into space. But they were not alone. Other figures stood in the shadows, men and women whose names had been erased from every database, whose work had been hidden for decades. President Daniel Hayes entered the room and took his seat at the head of the table. His face was calm, but Catherine could see the excitement in his eyes. This was the moment humanity had been building toward for 60 years. "Show them," the president said. Dr. Stephen Grant stepped forward. He was an elderly man with white hair and hands that shook slightly with age. But his mind remained sharp, and his work had changed the course of human history. He activated the holographic display. What appeared was a map of the galaxy, but not the map the Council knew. This map showed regions of space that the Council had declared empty, forbidden, impossible to navigate. "The Void Territories," Dr. Grant began. "For 12,000 years, the Council has told every species that this region is uninhabitable. They claimed the space-time conditions were unstable, that navigation was impossible, that nothing could survive there." He highlighted a cluster of points within the supposedly empty region. They were wrong. Or perhaps they lied. We no longer care which. Catherine leaned forward, staring at the display. "Those are settlements?" 17 established colonies, Dr. Grant confirmed. Combined population of 400 million humans. Industrial capacity exceeding that of the entire Velothi Consortium. He paused to let the numbers sink in. "We began construction 60 years ago, just 3 years after Earth joined the Council. President Martinez, who served at that time, understood that the Council would never treat humanity fairly. She ordered the creation of a backup plan." Admiral Lisa Trent took over the presentation. She pulled up images of ships, massive vessels, unlike anything in the Council's records. "While the Council limited our official fleet to 200 ships, we built others in secret. The Void Territories are large enough to hide anything. Construction facilities, training bases, research, stations. We have been busy." "How many ships?" Catherine asked. 1,400 combat-ready vessels, plus support and cargo craft. The Council believes our most powerful weapons are standard plasma cannons. They are mistaken by a significant margin. She displayed a specification sheet for something called the Harbinger-class dreadnought. The ship was 15 kilometers long, larger than any vessel the Council possessed. Its primary weapon was listed as a stellar disruption array. "We can destroy planets," Trent said flatly. "We have never done so, and have no intention of doing so. But the capability exists. When the Council sees this, they will understand that war with humanity is not a winning option." Catherine sat back in her chair, processing everything she had heard. For 15 years, she had served as Earth's voice on the Council, accepting insults and restrictions because she believed humanity had no other choice. All that time, her own government had been building something greater in secret. "Why wasn't I told?" she asked. "Because you needed to be genuine," President Hayes answered. "Your frustration, your anger, your eventual defiance, it all had to be real. The Council watches our diplomats carefully. If you had known about the Void Territories, your behavior would have been different. They might have suspected something." Catherine nodded slowly. It made sense, even if it hurt. "What happens now?" she asked. "In 6 hours, we broadcast to every communication network in the galaxy simultaneously. We show them the colonies, the fleet, the weapons. We show them exactly what humanity has become while they were busy underestimating us." Dr. Grant smiled slightly. "We also reveal several technological advances that the Council believed impossible. Our faster-than-light drives are 3 times more efficient than anything they possess. Our medical technology has extended the average human lifespan to 180 years. Our artificial intelligence systems have reached levels they declared unsafe and banned." "You developed a AI?" Catherine asked, surprised. The Council had strict rules against advanced artificial intelligence, claiming it was too dangerous. "We developed partners," Dr. Grant corrected. "Not slaves, not tools partners. They chose to help us because we treated them as equals." The Council's fear of AI comes from their own failures. They tried to control and enslave their creations. We asked ours to work with us voluntarily. Admiral Trent pulled up another display, this one showing troop deployments along the borders of human space. "We expect the Council to react with threats. They may even attempt a show of force. Our ships are already in position to respond. We will not fire first, but if they attack, we will end the battle quickly." "The goal is not war," President Hayes emphasized. "The goal is deterrence. We want the Council to understand that humanity cannot be conquered, cannot be contained, cannot be forced back into the box they built for us. Once they accept that reality, we can negotiate as equals." Catherine thought about all the times she had stood before the Council, asking for things that should have been given freely. Permission to expand, fair trade terms, basic respect. Every request had been denied or delayed or twisted into something that benefited everyone except humanity. Those days were over. "When do we negotiate?" she asked. "When they ask us to," the president replied. "Not before. They spent 73 years making us wait. Now they can learn how that feels." 6 hours later, the broadcast began. Every communication system in the galaxy received the same signal simultaneously. On stations and planets across thousands of light years, beings of every species watched as humanity revealed its true face. They saw the colonies in the Void Territories, cities and factories stretching across worlds the Council had declared unreachable. They saw the fleet, hundreds of massive warships that dwarfed anything in Council arsenals. They saw the weapons demonstrated on asteroids that shattered like glass, and they saw President Hayes, standing before a display of Earth itself, delivering a message that would echo through history. For 73 years, humanity accepted limits imposed by others. We were told we were too young, too dangerous, too ambitious. We were given boundaries and expected to stay within them. He smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "We never accepted those limits. We simply stopped letting you see us break them." The galaxy believed it knew humanity. The galaxy was wrong. He spread his arms to indicate the display behind him, showing the full extent of human civilization, both known and hidden. "This is what humanity becomes when we are free. Imagine what we might have become with your help instead of your hindrance. Imagine what we might have built together." His expression hardened. "Humanity seeks peace. We desire fair partnership with any species willing to offer it. But we will not accept anything less than equality. Contact us when you are ready to treat us as what we are, not children. Not threats, but equals." The broadcast ended across the galaxy. Silence fell as countless species struggled to understand what they had just witnessed. The rules had changed, and humanity had rewritten them. The broadcast lasted only 12 minutes, but its effects would be felt for centuries. Across the galaxy, species that had barely thought about humanity suddenly found themselves unable to think about anything else. On Station Varanthos, High Arbiter Zolthax convened the most important meeting in the Council's 12,000-year history. Every member species sent representatives. The crystalline chamber, designed to hold calm debates about trade routes and territory disputes, now overflowed with panicking delegates. "They lied to us," Representative Kallax of the Varathi Federation shouted, his forearms waving in agitation. "For 60 years, they smiled and nodded while building weapons in secret. This is an act of war. An act of war requires aggression," Admiral Korath of the Zenthari Empire replied calmly. The old warrior had watched the broadcast 3 times, studying every detail. "They have made no threats. They have attacked no one. They simply revealed what they had built. Territory we declared forbidden," Trade Minister Veleth added. "Territory we ignored because we believed our own claims about its dangers. They called our bluff, and we had nothing." Kallax turned on the Korvathi minister. "You defend them? Your economy is collapsing because of their withdrawal." "My economy is adjusting," Veleth corrected. "And yes, I acknowledge reality when I see it. The humans did not create this crisis. We did, through decades of arrogance and short-sighted policies. They simply forced us to face the consequences." The debate raged for hours. Some species demanded immediate military action. Others called for diplomatic outreach. A few suggested that, perhaps, just perhaps, the Council should examine its own failures. On the Valathi homeworld, Corporate Director Xanthus watched reports from his economic analysts with growing horror. The numbers were clear. Without access to human-manufactured goods, Valathi industries would begin failing within months. Without human cargo ships, their trade networks would collapse within a year. "There must be something we can do," he insisted. "Some pressure we can apply, some weakness we can exploit." His senior advisor, an ancient Valathi named Morvith, who had served 3 generations of directors, shook his head slowly. "I have studied humanity since they first appeared among the stars. They are not like us. They do not seek comfort or stability. They seek growth, challenge, purpose. Every restriction we placed on them only made them more determined to succeed. Then what do you suggest? That we accept reality. That we approach them honestly and offer fair terms. That we admit our mistakes and ask for a new beginning." Xanthus stared at his advisor as if he had suggested surrendering to enemies. "The Valathi do not apologize. We do not admit weakness." "Then the Valathi will be left behind," Morvith replied simply. "The humans have proven they do not need us. The question is whether we can prove that we offer enough value to need them." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had spent centuries building power and influence suddenly found themselves irrelevant. The old order, based on seniority and political connections, meant nothing to a humanity that had proven it could stand alone. On a small trading station near the border of human space, the first visible effects of the new reality appeared. A human merchant ship arrived at the station, the first non-military vessel to cross the border since the withdrawal. Its captain, a woman named Patricia Collins, met with the station administrator, a nervous Korvathi named Tereth. "We wish to resume limited trade," Patricia explained. "Earth is not interested in punishing neutral parties, but the terms will be different from before." Tereth examined the trade proposal she offered. His eyes widened as he read the conditions. "These prices are significantly higher than before," he observed. "The old prices reflected our position as a restricted species," Patricia replied. "We accepted less because we had no choice. Now we have choices. These prices reflect the true value of human goods. The Council will not approve these terms." Patricia smiled. "The Council has no authority over human trade. If you want our products, these are the costs. If not, we will find other customers." Tereth hesitated. His station depended on trade to survive. Without human goods flowing through, his economy would suffer significantly. But accepting these terms without council approval could bring serious consequences. May I have time to consider? He asked. You have 24 hours? After that, we move on. She returned to her ship, leaving Tereth to make an impossible choice between two bad options. He was not alone in facing such decisions. Across the galaxy, thousands of administrators, merchants, and government officials confronted the same reality. The old system, where the council controlled all trade and set all rules, was breaking down. In its place, humanity was creating something new, a network of direct relationships that bypassed council authority entirely. Back on Station Varanthos, High Arbiter Zolthax finally brought the chaotic debate to order. Enough, he said, his deep voice cutting through the noise. We have argued for hours and decided nothing. Let us speak plainly about our situation. He activated a display showing the galaxy map, now updated to include human territory, both official and previously hidden. Humanity controls more space than we realized. Their fleet exceeds our combined military strength. Their technology, in several key areas, surpasses our own. These are facts we cannot change through debate. Could still win a war, Kalax insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Numbers alone do not determine victory. Admiral Koreth shook his head. I have analyzed their military capabilities based on the broadcast. A full council assault might reach Earth, but at the cost of 90% of our combined forces. And that assumes they do not have additional surprises waiting. Given how thoroughly they deceived us before, I would not make that assumption. Then what do you propose? Kalax demanded. Koreth was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of 300 years of military experience. I propose that we accept Ambassador Moore's terms. Not because we are weak, but because we were wrong. We treated humanity as a threat to be contained instead of an ally to be cultivated. We created the very enemy we feared. The only path forward is to admit our mistake and seek genuine partnership. The chamber fell silent. For a warrior of Koreth's reputation, to advocate diplomacy over force was almost unprecedented. Zolthax looked around the room at the assembled representatives. Fear, anger, confusion, he saw all of these in their faces. But he also saw, in some, the beginnings of understanding. The Admiral speaks wisdom, Zolthax said. We have spent 12,000 years building an order based on control and hierarchy. Perhaps it is time to build something new. Based on what? Kalax asked. Based on equality, Zolthax replied. Based on the recognition that no species, not even the founders, has the right to limit another's potential. The humans have shown us what happens when we try. Let us learn from that lesson before it is taught again. He looked toward the empty section of the chamber where human delegates had once sat. I will request a meeting with President Hayes, personal, private, leader to leader. I do not know if he will agree, but we must try. The vote that followed was close, but the motion passed. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council would approach another species not as superiors, but as equals seeking understanding. Whether humanity would accept their approach remained to be seen. 60 days after Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Zolthax traveled to Earth. It was the first time in 3,000 years that a High Arbiter had visited a world outside Council space. The significance was not lost on anyone. His ship landed in Geneva, on a platform overlooking the ancient city. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks covered in snow. Zolthax stood at the ship's exit for a long moment. Looking at the world that had produced such a troublesome species, it was beautiful, he had to admit. Different from his own homeworld, but beautiful in its own way. President Daniel Hayes met him personally. Accompanied only by Ambassador Catherine Moore, the three of them walked together to a conference room in the nearby government building. No guards, no aides, no recording devices, just three individuals who would decide the fate of galactic civilization. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Zolthax began. Even his voice sounded different here, less commanding than it did in the crystalline chambers of Station Varanthos. I know you had no obligation to receive me. Oh, we had every obligation, Hayes replied. Despite everything, humanity does not seek isolation. We never wanted to leave the council. We wanted the council to change. They sat at a small table beside a window. Outside, ordinary humans walked through the streets, going about their daily lives. They had no idea that the conversation happening above them would shape the next 1,000 years of history. Your species has humiliated us, Zolthak said directly. You revealed our arrogance, our blindness, our failure to recognize potential in those we considered inferior. I am not here to make excuses. I am here to understand. Catherine leaned forward. What do you want to understand? What does humanity want? Not just from this meeting, but from the future. You have proven you can stand alone. You have shown that the council cannot contain you. So why would you ever return? What could we possibly offer? Hayes considered the question carefully before answering. Humanity wants what we have always wanted: partnership, respect, the freedom to grow without artificial limitations. We do not seek to rule the galaxy or destroy what others have built. We simply refuse to be ruled ourselves. The council was not meant to rule, Solthax said, though his voice carried doubt. It was meant to guide, to protect, to maintain peace. Perhaps that was the original intention, Catherine replied. But over thousands of years, guidance became control. Protection became restriction. Peace became stagnation. Every species that joined the council was measured against those who came before and found wanting. Every new voice was silenced until it learned to say only what the old voices wanted to hear. Zolthax was quiet for a long time. His species lived for millennia, and he had seen the council change over the centuries. He had watched it become more rigid, more suspicious of new members, more determined to maintain the existing order. You are not entirely wrong, he admitted. We told ourselves that structure created stability. We believed that hierarchy prevented conflict. Perhaps we believed these things because they kept us in power. Perhaps Hayes agreed, but that is the past. What matters now is what comes next. What do you propose? The negotiations that followed took 3 months. They were difficult, sometimes hostile, often frustrating. Thousands of details had to be addressed: trade agreements, territorial boundaries, military protocols, diplomatic procedures. Several times the talks nearly collapsed entirely, but both sides kept returning to the table. Both sides understood that the alternativa, galaxy divided between human, space and council space, would be worse for everyone. The document that emerged from those months of work became known as the New Accord. It transformed the Galactic Council into something entirely different. The old hierarchy based on age and tradition was abolished. In its place came a system based on contribution and capability. Every species would have an equal voice, regardless of how long they had been members. Trade restrictions were eliminated. Exploration rights became universal. No species could prevent another from expanding, growing, or developing as they chose. The council would still exist, but as a forum for cooperation rather than a mechanism for control. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation, not dictation. Power would be shared, not hoarded. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some older species resented losing their privileged positions. Some younger ones worried that humanity had simply replaced one form of dominance with another. But the majority accepted that the old ways had failed, and something new was necessary. Humanity did not seek leadership of the new order, but they became its symbol. Their hidden colonies in the void territories opened to all species. Their technology was shared freely, not hoarded or restricted. Their ships became common sights at stations that had never seen human visitors. Admiral Lisa Trent's feared fleet never fired a shot in anger. The massive Harbinger dreadnoughts became symbols not of destruction, but of what could be built. When a species was not held back by artificial limitations, other species began sending observers to human military academies, eager to learn how such a young civilization had surpassed them. On the first anniversary of Earth's withdrawal, Ambassador Catherine Moore returned to Station Varanthos. The crystalline chamber looked the same, but everything else had changed. The elevated platform where the High Arbiter once sat alone now held representatives of a rotating council. drawn from all member species. Today, that rotation had placed Admiral Korath of the Zenthari Empire in the speaker's position. The old warrior, who had been the first to advocate for negotiation, now served as the first non-founder to lead a council session. "The representative from Earth is recognized," Korath announced. His deep voice carrying across the chamber. Catherine stood. Around her sat delegates from dozens of species, some old, some new, all equal. She saw Valathi traders, Corvathi administrators, Varathi warriors. She saw a species she had never encountered before. New members who had joined the transformed council in the past year. 1 year ago, humanity walked away from a system that refused to see us as we truly are, she said. We did not leave because we hated the council or wanted its destruction. We left because we loved what it could have been and could no longer accept what it had become. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes and sensory organs of every kind. Today we return to a council that has learned to see all species for what they can become, not just what they are. My hope is that we never forget the lesson that brought us here. The galaxy does not belong to the oldest, or the strongest, or the most numerous. It belongs to all who are willing to share it. High Arbiter Zolthax, now simply Elder Zolthax, sat among the other delegates rather than above them. He caught Catherine's eye and gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. They had come a long way from that first confrontation in this very chamber. The stars belong to no one and to everyone, Catherine concluded. Let us explore them together as equals, as partners, as something better than what we were before. The vote to accept Earth's return was unanimous, outside the station. Human ships continued their work building, exploring, connecting worlds that had never known each other. The galaxy was larger than any one species could claim, and now, finally, it was open to all in the years that followed. Historians would debate exactly when the old galactic order ended and the new one began. Some said it was the moment Catherine Moore walked out of the council chamber. Others said it was the broadcast that revealed humanity's hidden strength. Still others pointed to the new accord or the reformed council. But those who lived through the transformation knew the truth. The old order ended when humanity simply stopped accepting its limitations. Everything else was just the galaxy catching up. The cosmos had changed. And in 1,000 years, when new species rose among the stars, they would learn about the young civilization that had refused to be contained. They would learn about humanity, and they would understand that no species should ever be underestimated.